My question is for Mr. Wilkinson. You said the plural of anecdote isn't data. Well, Anthony Trollope said that anecdote is the singular of statistics. And indeed, behind every statistic there is a person. Behind every person there is a moral question. And I feel that we perhaps moved away from the morality debate. What about this? In an evening of alcohol consumption, there comes a moment when alcohol is poisonous. And given that it is in some way through the senses that we have access to reason, and so that part also can feel, touch and hear things, anything which heightens the senses, therefore can give us access to more reason. And I take it that we both think reason is a good thing. Secondly, alcohol is something which can be enjoyed in common, and therefore can go towards the common good. My question would be, does cannabis give access to heightened sensory perception, in which case do we think it's good? And secondly, can you share with somebody else's high? In which case do we think cannabis is good?
I'll answer that in three parts. The point about anecdote is that the problem with anecdote is that it's been selected, is not gathered rigorously. Another problem, which is not specifically to do with it being anecdote, is very often that it's not gathered expertly either, and that's very much the case here because two events happened. My child took cannabis, my child didn't do well at school, or whatever it is. Not necessarily in that order, but we won't look too closely at that. And a connection hasn't been observed there. I mean, so far as gathering statistics for correlation is concerned, that's not a problem. But the problem with anecdote is that it's selective. People choose to give anecdotes. They're not. If you chose somebody at random and forced them to answer the question whether their child took cannabis and whether they did well at school, that might be the singular of data. Anecdotes which are sent in to Peter Hitchens by people who read his blog because they recognise something or they think they recognise something that he's written about, they're self-selecting. He's only going to get people who agree. Not only perhaps, but he'll probably do some more selection.
Oh, well, in that case, will you join me in a call for a government-funded study of the effects of cannabis on the mental health of the young? I would love to see it. I have no doubt whatever what it would reveal.
I think we have.
And I think we've had no such thing, no such effort. It's in nobody's interest. All the money, all the pressure, all the lobbies are on the other side. If I could persuade anybody in any serious position to devote the many millions of pounds and many people which would be required to establish what I believe to be the truth, which is this is a major danger to the mental health of the young, then I would be delighted. I have to rely on anecdotes because that's all there is, except I have to say for the recent Dunedin cohort study which showed, it seems to me pretty much incontrovertibly, that cannabis use in school years was followed by a decline in intelligence. And the most astonishing statistic, buried in the newspapers, but it's clear for all to see, using about the most objective statistics you could possibly find and controlling for almost all conceivable other variables. People who smoke cannabis decline in intelligence if they use it during school years. If something does that to you when you're at school, it seems to me it's something you should be worried about. Let's have the research.
Again,
I'm sick of relying on anecdotes, but it's all I've got. I think that all the money, George Soros and all the rest of it, all the money is on the other side, not on mine.
George Soros and pretty much no one else. The DEA has been blocking research into medical marijuana, which I agree is not really to the point, but it is to the point in propaganda terms, and that's why they're blocking it. There's a chap called G. Alan Marlett, and you don't hear this kind of thing very often about suppressed research because it's because of people's careers that they are suppressed. Because people are concerned about their careers, they don't tend to report the fact that they've been suppressed or they've been told, don't do this research because it's bad for your career. There's a chap called G. Alan Marlett who was told in no uncertain terms by the government agencies he was applying to do a comparative study of alcohol and cannabis. He was told, you can do one or the other, but don't compare them because we don't want anybody to say that cannabis could be better than alcohol, or alcohol could be worse than cannabis. Just to get to that moral question, cannabis does seem to heighten the senses, maybe not in a scientific term, maybe not in scientific terms. Cannabis is generally used by most people, I think, to enhance other things they're doing. So in that sense, it's not like heroin, where you just withdraw into yourself and could be anywhere, totally excluding the world. And it can be social as well. People often smoke together and have a laugh and a giggle, and as Peter likes to point out, he calls it giggling. But I mean, people laugh when they're drinking alcohol together as well, I think.
Well, that's not even anecdotal.
Okay, next question, I think. Yeah, gentlemen.
Thank you. Just to briefly disagree with Jeff about the alcohol, wine, and I say nonsense.
Down to dose, I think. Small doses of both are good. As Kipling points out, cannabis should be used in small doses. And I think the same applies to alcohol. At first, it does have a certain stimulant effect. As you go on, it's more depressant. Sorry, carry on.
So my question was just on the practical aspect. I think perhaps the people in this room are somewhat underrepresented in the country, and unfortunately there is a possibility that cannabis may be legalised in the future. I just wondered what your thoughts on the effects would be, whether you think that will result in more people smoking cannabis or less people smoking cannabis.
So who's that? Is that addressed to Tim?
Okay, well, I'll go first then. It's hard to say. I don't actually think... I imagine it probably would, at least in the short term, cause an increase in the number of people taking cannabis. In terms of the people that we have to, who can't look after themselves, the children, adolescents, I think it would make cannabis... it would probably make it easier to discourage them from taking it. Possibly even to prevent them from taking it, and it would certainly make it easier to put health warnings on the packets and that kind of thing, which is basically the approach which I think should be taken to preventing drug use. I mean, selling to children, I would anticipate, under 18s perhaps, would still be illegal, and since the criminal dealers would be out of business, you'd have companies who have premises and a reputation who wouldn't want to be caught selling to children.
I'm so
children would still get hold of it, of course, but they do at the moment as well, and they would under almost any regime.
I'm so glad this is being recorded. I mean, it is such tripe. Look, you don't even need to ask it, do you? If it's more readily available, more people will get a hold of it. It just doesn't even need to be discussed. And the idea also that because it's legal, you'll put health warnings on it and children won't get hold of it. I was recently in a park in Birkenhead, which I'd been invited to view by a local politician. And it was full of children of 12 and 13 necking from 2-litre bottles of vodka. It was illegal for them to buy it. I was also recently in the lovely town of Boston in Lincolnshire, which is probably the centre of Britain's illegal alcohol distilling industry. In fact, 3 people were killed in an illegal still the other day. Alcohol is legal in this country, but do you really think that if cannabis became legal in this country, that either Ed Balls or Gideon Osborne wouldn't find a way of taxing it? And if it's taxed, do you not think people would find a way of evading the tax by getting around it? There is massive trade in illegal alcohol and indeed illegal cigarettes in this country. And legalisation would make no difference to that. It would just mean there was a lot more of it about. Again, we were told, I remember it, I was a powerless political reporter at the time on paper. I had to watch in appalled horror as lies were told by government departments in the early 80s about the effects of liberalising the drinking laws. Oh, it will mean people will not get so drunk. It will mean we have a cafe culture. And we all know now that what it meant was a blizzard of drunkenness on every main street in the country, which goes on and on and on. When the restrictions were taken off, more people drank. If the restrictions come on cannabis, more people will smoke it. And I'll tell you another thing, more people will go mad. And whether you call it, I don't know what you will technically call it, but if you happen to be living with one of them, you'll find it a very unpleasant experience. There will be a lot more of it about. And it's just so irresponsible to pretend anything else. But at least it will be possible, when this disaster has come to pass, to point to the recording of Tim saying what he just said, well, hang on a minute, you said that then, now what do you think? And I'd love to watch your face when you're confronted with what you see.
No, I would certainly stand by that. Whatever happens, I've actually said it's hard to say. But I think we need to be looking at the reasons why problematic drug and alcohol use happens. Much more than trying. It's not going to be stamped out under any regime. It's going to happen. You know, you saw some kids in the park drinking cider. That's always happened. Vodka.
Yeah.
That's always
strong
happened.
Work. Supposedly harder to get hold of. And I've just elaborately explained that I don't believe you can stamp things out. I only believe you can discourage and deter them, that you can reduce them, and you can ameliorate things by taking.
But there are other ways of dealing with them as well.
Well, yes, but one of them is not to make a poison more readily.
When it's illegal, people won't admit to it. They won't go to the doctor and tell them they're doing it. They'll lie to their parents and everyone else about it. I think the key is to get these things out in the open. Look at the problems. There are huge problems, underlying social problems. People stuck on sink estates with no chance of getting a job. What else are they going to do apart from sit around drinking vodka or smoking dope or whatever all day? That's beyond my brief, but...
Yeah, it's called changing the subject, actually. I don't blame you, but that's what it is.
No, I think that's the way. That's the only way to address problematic patterns of drug use, as a sociologist might call it. So it's not changing the subject at all.
Okay.